There is a quiet belief that many people carry through life without ever saying it out loud. It doesn't always appear as a clear thought. Sometimes it exists more like a feeling in the background of everything you do. A subtle sense that no matter how hard you try, it's still not quite enough. Part 48 is about the psychology behind the feeling of not being enough. From the outside, people who carry this feeling often look completely normal. They work hard, they achieve things, they maintain relationships, they appear responsible and capable. But inside, there is a constant inner voice that questions their worth. When something goes well, they quickly move to the next expectation. When something goes wrong, the mind immediately interprets it as confirmation of their deepest fear. Maybe I'm just not good enough. This feeling rarely appears suddenly. It usually develops slowly over time through repeated experiences that shape how a person evaluates themselves. In many cases, it begins during childhood. Children naturally look to the people around them to understand their value. The reactions they receive from parents, teachers, and peers slowly become the mirror through which they see themselves. When encouragement, understanding, and emotional support are consistent, a child begins to feel secure in their worth. But when approval feels conditional, unpredictable, or tied only to achievement, the child may begin to believe that love and acceptance must be earned constantly. Over time, this belief becomes internalized. Instead of asking whether a situation went well or poorly, the mind begins asking a more personal question. What does this say about me? Every mistake becomes evidence of inadequacy. Every success feels temporary. Even praise can feel uncomfortable because it contradicts the internal belief that something is missing. Part 48 explores another source of this feeling: comparison. Human beings naturally compare themselves to others to understand their place in the world. But in modern life, these comparisons have expanded dramatically. Every day you see images of success, beauty, talent, and achievement from people across the world. The brain processes these examples as standards. Without realizing it, your mind begins measuring your life against thousands of other lives. Someone appears more successful. Someone appears more confident. Someone appears happier or more accomplished. And slowly the conclusion begins to form. Everyone else seems to have something I don't. This comparison rarely reflects reality. What you see is a small portion of someone's life, often the most polished part. The struggles, insecurities, and uncertainties behind that image remain invisible. But the brain still absorbs the comparison as truth. Part 48 also explains how perfectionism contributes to the feeling of not being enough. When your mind sets extremely high standards for performance or behavior, it becomes almost impossible to feel satisfied with yourself. Even when you succeed, the mind immediately notices the small imperfections that remain. Instead of feeling proud, you begin focusing on what could have been better. Perfectionism creates a moving target for self-worth. The moment you reach one standard, the mind quietly raises the next one. This cycle creates constant pressure and prevents the experience of genuine self-acceptance. Another psychological factor is internalized criticism. Many people grow up hearing critical messages about their abilities, appearance, or behavior. Over time, those external voices become internal voices. Even when the original source of criticism is no longer present, the mind continues repeating the same judgments. You may hear thoughts like, "You should be better than this. You should have figured this out by now. Other people are doing more." These thoughts begin to feel like objective truth rather than learned patterns. Part 48 also touches something deeper about identity. When self-worth becomes tied to performance, your value begins to feel unstable. If you achieve something, you feel temporarily validated. But if you fail or struggle, the entire sense of worth feels threatened. Instead of seeing mistakes as part of learning, the mind interprets them as evidence of personal failure. This creates a fragile form of self-esteem that depends entirely on external outcomes. But human worth cannot realistically function that way. Life naturally includes mistakes, uncertainty, and growth. If your value depends on avoiding those experiences, you will constantly feel inadequate. Part 48 also reveals a paradox. Many people who feel like they are not enough are actually highly capable individuals. They work harder than most people around them. They pay close attention to how their actions affect others. They strive to improve themselves constantly. But because their internal standards are so high, they rarely recognize their own progress. Instead of seeing how far they have come, they focus on the distance that remains. This creates the illusion that they are falling short even when they are growing significantly. Another important factor is emotional sensitivity. Some individuals experience emotions more intensely than others. They reflect deeply on their actions, their relationships, and their impact on the world around them. This depth of reflection can create insight and empathy, but it can also amplify self-doubt. When your mind constantly evaluates your behavior, it becomes easier to find reasons to criticize yourself. Part 48 moves toward a different perspective on self-worth. The idea that your value must be proven constantly is not an objective truth. It is a belief that developed through experiences and interpretations. That belief can slowly change when you begin recognizing how it formed. Self-worth does not need to be earned repeatedly through achievement. It can exist as a stable foundation rather than a temporary reward. This does not mean abandoning growth or ambition. It means separating your identity from your performance. You can pursue goals, improve skills, and make mistakes without those experiences determining your fundamental value as a person. Part 48 ends with a powerful realization. The feeling of not being enough is not proof of inadequacy. It is evidence of a mind that learned to measure itself harshly in order to survive expectations and comparisons. But survival strategies are not permanent truths. Over time, the mind can learn something new. It can learn that worth is not a competition. It is not a race against others. It is not something that disappears when mistakes happen. Your value does not vanish when you struggle, and it does not suddenly appear when you succeed. It exists independently of both. And when that understanding slowly begins to replace the old belief, the quiet voice that once said you are not enough begins to lose its authority. Because the truth was never that you were lacking. The truth was that you had been measuring yourself with rules that were never designed to be fair.